Okay. All right. So the conversation today with Tina Djuretic,
Yeah.
also known as Sage, if you know her work, which after today, if you don't, you're going to be pursuing her work because she has really poured her heart into her memoir, the story of her life, her struggles, her challenges, her growth in such a vulnerable way, such a real way that it really just reads like fiction. I was engrossed with it. Finding My Sovereignty is the title of her book, and it is her story, it is her life and her truth. And we're here to talk about it today. And I'm so excited to have you here, Tina. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here, Sarah.
The book that you wrote truly was something that just it was just a page turner, you know. It was one of those books that you pick up and you really just don't want to put down. And it really did read like fiction. But it was your life.
Yeah. Yeah. And thank you for saying that. I appreciate that. I'm an avid reader myself, and when I can't put a book down, right? We love that as readers. So
For
that's a
sure.
compliment I can have. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. But at the same time, I'm sorry that it was so shockingly real for
Mm.
you. That the things that make books page turners are usually things that are sort of what would we say, like they're
Drama.
in drama, engaging in maybe I can't believe that's true kind of way, you know, something that is very, you want to absorb yourself in the story. It's like it's almost like some of it is almost unbelievable in terms of like you have to just keep reading it to believe it kind of thing. It's almost like seeing a bad accident and not being able to look away.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
I don't want to speak for you. I want you to share about your journey and all that you have navigated and just I guess start where it feels good for you to start.
Sure. The premise of the book, I almost wrote it to be like a case study of one person's life, because really that's what a memoir is. But I really had purpose. I wasn't just telling the story. I really wanted people to see how childhood trauma, whether you remember it or not, because I didn't remember mine. And that was really significant in my life. I knew the broad strokes of the things that had happened to me. I mean, of course, I remember joining a cult, a church like a cult like church when I'm 10. You don't forget those things. I remember the big incidents, the biggest beatings that came down, those kinds of things. But the rest is a blank canvas. Like, truly, my sisters would be like, "Do you remember when we lived in that house and it had those stairs?" And I'm like, "No, like, how do you know that?" They're like, "How do you not?" And I was the one who forgot everything. And I always thought that served me. And it did, because it helped me to survive childhood. That's what our soul does to protect us, right? Takes those memories away for a while. But we're supposed to remember them so we can heal them later. Only some of us never do. And that's what happened to me. So there I was, attracting really unhealthy people. I wouldn't have called it that at the time, but I was attracting really unhealthy people into my life, really narcissistic people, a lot of bipolar people, um, yeah, just into my life. And then, of course, that bleeds into your dating life as well. And I ended up dating three incredibly narcissistic people in a row, except I didn't have that language at the time, right? We have this language now. I didn't have that language growing up. My generation, the generations before us, they didn't have these words or this understanding. So here you are flailing in life, and you're trying. I tried and I struggled financially and career wise, and friendships always leaving me and betraying me. And finally, at the end, after the third big partner that I had, when it all fell to shit, sorry for the language, when it all fell to crap, I had one of those like moments where you just go, I need to stop. Like, Why is this happening? I finally had some words, but I also finally was starting to see that it was a pattern because each of my exes were so different that it was like, okay, the first one didn't love me back. I'm never doing that again. Right? I thought I was learning and growing. The next one was an addict. Yeah, never doing that again. Oof, that was a nasty one, a really tough one. And it took me a long time to recover from that one. And then when the third one came along, I'm so much older. I'm in my mid 40s. I'm smarter. You know what I mean? You think you're growing in life. And when he ends up being my mother, who's bipolar, I'm blowing the whole story, but that's what we're here for. That brought me to my knees. Like, that's where I just went, I'm sorry. How did I not see that coming? I've spent my whole life around bipolar people. How did I not see it coming? And all the signs were there. That's the kicker. It's not like, well, he became that way. No, actually, right from day one, the signs were there. And I made excuses for them because I've been doing that my whole life. We're so good at making excuses for other people's bad behavior, right? And so that was the catalyst that brought me to my knees and just made me stop and go, I need to stop asking the question, what's wrong with men? And I need to start asking the question, what is wrong with me? What is wrong with me? That all I'm attracted to is this kind of men, or, all that's attracted to me is this kind of men, either way. And that was the start of it. So that was the beginning of my spiritual awakening. And I went to see a channeler, and she was a magical little fairy lady. I just love her. She's really tiny and petite. She reminds me of a little fairy. She just has a really pretty face and pale skin. But anyway, she's the one who really walked me through my childhood trauma. But what I love about her as well is that she also walked me through my parents' trauma and their parents' trauma, and really showed me how this is a very generational trauma. And I think understanding that was really important to my being able to forgive. To know someone else treated my parents that way, and that's all they knew, and that's what they did, doesn't make it okay. But it helps you to forgive, because you do. If you're going to heal, you do need to forgive. You cannot carry that stuff with you. But that is what started sort of the whole wake up to the memories of the things that happened. I started writing the book. She told me I had to write the memoir. That was a really big ask. I did not want to do that. Right? That was like not only putting your own personal pain out there and your mistakes for the world to see, but I didn't want to do that to the people that hurt me either. That was never my intent. But she said, you're going to get healing by writing this. And that was a worthy cause. But more importantly, the people who read it are also going to relate to it, and they're going to get healing. And that was the call to action that made me go, yeah, okay, I have to do this. Yeah. And that's kind of
Yeah.
how it began.
Thank you for just giving us those glimpses into your story, into the book, and knowing what I know from reading the book. I mean, I just know that a lot of your journey with making those repetitive decisions or attracting those similar types of people absolutely came from just not receiving love as a
Mm.
child.
Oof, not even knowing what it was.
Right. And let's go back to that for a few minutes, if we can, to help our listeners understand why you were attracting people who either weren't emotionally available, weren't able to love in the way that you were seeking love, and how your childhood really influenced that, your need to just reach for love in a way that even as an adult wasn't available to you.
Yeah. We have basic needs as children. We need support. We're babies, we're children. We can't take care of ourselves. We need support. We need safety, right? We need security. We need love from our tribe, whatever your tribe might be. These are just basic, and love, right? You want to know someone loves you. And until we're about 7 years old, we're being programmed what love looks like, what love feels like. That's really important. We're really feeling people. So we feel what love looks like. Whether it's actually love or not, it's your definition of what love is, because it's what you're receiving, what you're seeing, what you're witnessing, even the relationship between your parents. You're witnessing what love looks like, what it feels like, what it says, what it does. So if you have none of those things as a child, you have such a warped definition of what love is anyways, that your inner child becomes incredibly damaged, if you will, because they have such a warped concept. So now that inner child, when you have, so my parents were physically, mentally, and emotionally abusive. And once I was 10 and they joined this church, it became also a very fear-based, it was a very fear-based religion, not a love-based religion. Incredibly fear-mongering. 4 times a week we went to church, and we were told we were going straight to hell, if we disobeyed. And they were really particularly hard on children, of course. And then my parents, being narcissists, well, they took that message and ran with it. So we didn't just get that at church, we got it at home as well. So it was fear, 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 fear. And then we feared our parents. We actually feared the physical repercussions. We weren't aware what the mental damage was doing. And in the end, it was the mental and emotional damage that really sticks with you, because it becomes the programming of what you think about yourself. And so when you receive that kind of upbringing, your child never grows up, your inner child. Your human body grows, your physical body grows, but your inner child doesn't. They're stunted in that pain and in that growth, especially if there's a big catalyst, for childhood trauma. If a parent dies when you're young, if you've been sexually abused, maybe, these are huge catalysts that just the child stops growing right in that moment, because they're just trapped in that moment. So now here you become this adult, and you're trying to human on this planet, and you're trying to have this human experience. And you don't even understand, especially if you can't remember childhood, you don't even understand why you're attracted to these people. And mentally, I was going, I don't want another relationship like this. Like, my whole self was actively working against having these experiences again. And yet, that was all I was attracting, because this is the law of attraction, right? You don't get what you want in life, you get what you are. And of course, first time I heard that, I'm like, excuse me, I'm not a narcissist. I don't treat people badly. I don't betray people. I don't do those things. I'm a really good person. It's really offensive, that statement, right? Until you realize that what that means is, if you're broken, all you can attract is broken. Like attracts like energy attracts like. Doesn't mean they'll be broken in the same way you are, because narcissists are really good at finding broken people, and they're broken too, make no mistake. Something creates narcissists, right? Things like bipolar can be hereditary, right? So I understand that, but still, narcissists are really good at finding other broken people, but they don't want another narcissist in their life. They don't want someone who's going to also fight back and have a massive ego and need to be number one. There can only be number one in a narcissist's life, right? And that's them. So they're going to find people like myself who were broken by a narcissist, because because it's all we've ever known, without even realizing it, we're still seeking out narcissistic partners, because that's our version of love. Even though I looked at my parents and went, you are not love. I knew that mentally, but our energetically inside, you're going to attract the energy that lives inside of you. So if you were programmed with all of these things and you've never healed, all of this is about healing. If you healed all of this, this is a whole different ballgame. But if you haven't healed these things, this is the energy that's living inside of you. It's how you've been programmed. It is your computer chip. And so it repeats itself. The lesson keeps repeating itself until it's learned, right? That is karma.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really true. You just keep getting bigger memos and
Yes,
larger messages sent every time if you're not listening, right? But
exactly.
that repeated manipulation, the repeated rejection throughout your journey and throughout your life. Um, Tina, I just feel like you are somebody who has really sat with that truth and was honest with yourself and really dug deep into how you could change the trajectory of your life. And I think a lot of people just shove it farther down and never try to find a different way. They just
Mm,
continue the patterns and continue just in the very toxic way of their life and become a victim.
yeah. Well, you get
And
that
you,
victim mentality, right? Gosh,
mm-hmm,
only bad things ever happened to me. Oh, good.
mm-hmm,
Now that's what you're putting out into the world. So guess what? That's what the universe is delivering.
mm-hmm.
So you perpetuate your own chaos and your own pain by not healing it. Yeah, it's
And I
very true.
think one of the big differences for you is the spiritual connection with all of this.
Mm,
A lot of people aren't able to see that, and a lot of people are confusing spirituality with religion, right? And when you say the word spirituality, people immediately, think of church or like a white man in the sky kind of situation, and it's totally different, right? It's not what we're talking about here. Um, but you have such a spiritual awareness. And I think that that is what has really allowed you to step away from the toxicity and change the story of your life. That I
mhm.
think has been huge for you.
Oh, huge. Huge. Honestly, I don't know how I'm still alive. These people wanted me dead. Not all of them, but my parents did. Like, because that is the goal of the darkness that controls them, right? Darkness loves death. It doesn't want anyone, especially when it understands that your mission is to write a memoir and then to help other people. Oh, it doesn't want you doing that. I mean, I even just writing the memoir, the things that started happening to me on a spiritual level were so, to me, because it was new, bizarre, and frightening. I'm not going to lie. In order to heal, you got to move through your fear first, right? So if you have this really fear-based childhood, throw in an incredibly fear-based religion. Um, I mention in the book how they made me sit through an exorcism and watch this happening. And I literally saw the demons, and then my mind just shut down. And for the rest of my life, I'm like, I don't believe in demons or heaven or hell or God. And I don't believe in those things. And yet, fear, when no one else was looking, fear still controlled me in a ridiculous way. I'm a 45-year-old woman, and I'm still like, when I got to the bedroom, because I've never had a bed that just sat on the floor, because I've always lived in apartments and I always need storage space under the bed, right? Because they're so tiny apartments. I would literally, when I'd get to the bed, I was so afraid that there was something under the bed that I would do that little hop into the bed at the last minute. I'm 45 years old and I'm still scared of the demons living under the bed, while telling myself, I don't believe in that stuff. But that programming and what I saw as a child was so powerful. It was my biggest fear. I never watched horror movies in my life. I could not. I'd have nightmares for months. Something like Hellraiser when I was a kid growing up. These were the Halloween movies. Oh my God. I think I watched one and then I was a disaster for having nightmares, forever. So I had to walk through that to heal it. And I'm not gonna lie, it was scary, but now it holds no power over me. I understand that I am more powerful than all of the darkness, and I don't need to be afraid of it. And I'm not. And God, that piece is so beautiful. I sleep better at night. I don't check under the bed anymore before I go to bed. Sometimes I'll literally stand there for 30 seconds just to say, I'm not afraid of this anymore. Because that rule, it's so silly. I've never told that to, I don't tell that to people, right? Yes, I'm 45 and I'm scared of the monsters under my bed. People are going to think you're psycho. But that was my reality, because that was my experience, and it was a profound experience. And I think a lot of people who go to fear-based religions have that same kind of fear,
Oh, I have
because
no
it's
doubt.
poured into you.
Yeah,
Right?
no, I have no doubt. And a lot of people who are listening to this episode, even just the little bits that you have mentioned seem like something that couldn't possibly be real, right? Um, Witnessing an exorcism as a child. And we're not talking about like being spanked as a kid, which, people might think of in terms of like, oh, my parents used to hit me. No, you were like literally beaten and to the point where you could have died.
Yeah. Yeah. The time my father hit me with a hammer, I mean, it's a hammer. I don't know that I need to explain that very much. I
Right.
thought I was going to die.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, and just from those early on experiences of that deep religious abuse and trauma and the way it's carried itself into your home, and then the way that you manifested that in a way to, attract these toxic people into your life that continued to abandon you and continued to mistreat you and continued to just dehumanize you in a lot of ways.
Mhm.
The fact that you have found yourself on the other side of this. I mean, everybody needs to read the book because it really is just a very glimpse of what you share because you're very vulnerable in
Mhm.
your memoir. And I have to believe that how you sit today with your healing and your spiritual connections is a direct result of you just pouring yourself out into that space. That and all the spiritual check marks along the way that you also mention in your book, all the little big, right, moments in time that led you to leaning into the spirituality that you too once thought was not going
Yeah.
to be a thing for you because you thought it was religion.
Exactly. Yes. Anything that had to do with anything esoteric or anything for me was like, oh no, that's church, right? Even 4 years ago, when it was like you need to meditate, and I would sit there and I'd be like, oh my God, this feels like prayer.
Yeah.
Just how much religion has damaged these beautiful sacred things that we've done. They've put such a taint on it by creating this money grabbing, fear based institutions, because I've got no problem with people who are Christians. If your message is love, because that was the
Mm-hmm.
message of the Christ, was love, not fear and hate. And oh, by the way, I'm going to preach to you every day that money is the root of all evil, but my church is painted in gold. My
Mm-hmm.
robes are stitched in gold. And don't ask questions, right? The fact that you're not allowed to ask questions right there should be a,
Well, that's anytime you're part of
yeah.
any kind of institution or organization that says you cannot ask questions, that is your sign it's a cult.
Thank you very much. Yes, it is, right? Any institution that says
Mm-hmm.
do not ask questions. How have we not sorted this out after 2000 years of religion, right? Like, it does so much damage. Yeah. And it just pulls us further away from what's true, and that God lives inside of us. We don't have to go to church to find God. God lives inside of us. And that was even Jesus's message. Like, for heaven's sakes, it's right there, It's amazing how you can twist a message to mind control and keep everyone living in fear. You control people when they live in fear. That's why people do it. That's why
Mm-hmm.
governments do it. That's why religion does it. That's why abusers do it. When someone lives in fear, when you're living in fear, you're always in flight or fight mode, because you're never knowing when the fight's going to come, right? When it's going to come down on you. And so then your whole life becomes trigger reacted. you're constantly reacting to your triggers, to which there's many of them, and to your fear, and you're living in a survival mode. How long can your physical body live in survival mode where you're always tense, you're always waiting for the other shoe to drop, you're always waiting for someone who loves you to leave you, because that's what they do, to hurt you, to abandon you, and yet you're so afraid of living alone. A lot of people are afraid of living alone. That was never really my thing, to be fair. I had years between my partners where I knew I needed to heal and I wasn't ready for someone else. And yet in my heart, I longed for someone to love me. It wasn't about being alone. It was about, doesn't anyone love me? Because when the message when you're a kid is also, because the programming for me of you'll never be anyone, I don't love you, I don't want you, you're so fat, you're terrible at school, you're such a horrible child, you're going straight to hell, that negative programming, even when you get older and go, as I did, nope, I'm going to be a theater major. I'm going to be a jazz singer. I'm going to be glamorous. I'm going to do all these things. I never sought fame, but I loved the glam of dressing up and putting on makeup and putting on those masks, right? And pretending that I was this happy-go-lucky person, which I really thought I was on the outside. But my inner voice was so powerful that no one will ever love you, because that's the message you get when your parents don't love you, when the people around you don't love you, when they kick you and treat you worse than they treat the dog. Not that anyone should ever kick a dog, so please don't do that, but you get the idea. So then when someone says, love bombs you and says I love you, you believe them, because you don't know what real love looks like anyways. So then when they do these terrible things and you go, you know what, I don't love that. And I was always one that fought back. I am lippy, super lippy, but I would also go, he had a really bad day at work. Gonna let that slide. Well, I'm not gonna let it slide because I'm gonna stand up for myself. So there I am thinking I'm being so powerful and strong. Hey, you don't get to talk to me that way. But then I would also make the excuse, all right, he's had a bad day at work. I'm a little pissed that he talked to me that way, but I'm gonna let that go. Well, how much do you let things go years into a relationship? That gap of I'm going to let that go just becomes, a canyon. And it's because you don't believe that you actually deserve love, because that's the only message you've heard in your life. And then your toxic relationships just reaffirm that message. And that's how you
Right.
allow it to happen. Right.
Well, it's not hard to understand how that does happen.
Mm.
And it's also not hard to understand how you found yourself in theater, because
Mm.
it was a way to really be somebody different and wear a mask and have a different life
Yes.
without actually
Being judged for doing that.
being judged for doing that. Correct. Right.
That's
You were
true.
able, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
you were able to really just step out of who you were and become somebody else. And I
Yeah.
think that that was probably a lot of what saved you along the way.
It felt good to be someone else for a minute, right? Like, or for months, because usually you're in rehearsals for weeks or months for any kind of a play that you're in. In fact, I really understood that after theater, when I decided I wanted to be a jazz singer and I had no masks to hide behind. The first time I got on the stage to sing jazz, I really struggled. I didn't know what to say in between songs. I didn't know how to engage the audience and talk to them because I had no character, no mask to hide behind. That really threw me for a loop. And I always found
Mhm.
it far more intimidating to be a jazz singer than I did to do a play. Yeah, you nailed it on the head, because I loved being a character. I loved that. When I had to be myself, it was like, there's nothing interesting about me. Why would I put that on the stage? I only want to sing, right? But it's not how it works.
Mhm.
You got to talk in between the songs.
Right,
That's half the
right.
gig, right? And I struggled. I really struggled with that at first. Yeah. Hmm. It was only when I became a public speaker in a different capacity when I worked on cruise ships that I'm not afraid of being on the stage anymore in any capacity.
Hmm.
Singing still makes me nervous because I'm not a singer anymore, right? That's a past life, but you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Early in my life, but I'm not afraid to public speak at all. You can put me on any world stage and I would be fine. Yeah.
Well, and I think a lot of people will find a lot of intrigue in the way that you have traveled the world and put yourself in different public situations and on different stages of the world. And you mentioned in your book that, at least initially, coming and going and leaving and staying like that was a way to escape a lot of what was going on in your life.
Sure, you bet. Yeah, every time I had three major relationships, but that doesn't mean I didn't pine over people, right? I pined over a lot of people. And whenever I pined over someone and they didn't return that affection, or it, maybe a one night stand happened and then they ghosted me or something. So every heartbreak, let's put it that way, I ran. I'm like, yeah, time to travel again. So I always called it traveling and seeing the world. And I'm a Sagittarius, so that's what we do anyways, right? Super wanderlust, super, non-commitment type, super, I want to see the world and I'm super curious about everything. But my sisters always called it running away. They were like, "Oh, you're going out, you're going to go travel again, right?" Yeah, or running away. And so I joked in the book that my life was fight and flight mode, but for me it was literally flights. My flight to, this place and that place and that place. I literally got on a plane and flew somewhere. And
Mhm.
the excitement of that new place would carry me for a while. You can't run from who you are. You can't run from your problems. And of course, in that new place, you would just have issues, the same issues, right? But I guess for me, that also brought balance because I had such extreme lows in my personal life that the traveling was the extreme highs.
Mhm.
And that's what
And
brought me joy into my life. Yeah. So every time I felt like, oh my God, my life is turning to crap, well, then let's go do something exciting. So that was my distraction. Instead of walking through my problems and my issues, I avoided them. But then
mhm.
I would self-reflect, to be fair. I have a Virgo moon, and Virgos are thinkers. And so I would self-analyze. I have self-analyzed since I was a child, actually. I don't ever remember a time when I didn't like truly self-analyze. And not just me, the people involved. Like I've really always understood people, which is ironic that I couldn't figure out what the problem was, but that's because the problem was on a spiritual level, right? So it was I understood the mentality of things, right? Like I understood why people did things. Also, I'm an empath. I'm a super strong empath. So I didn't even have to self-analyze them too long. I felt what they were feeling. And that's also why they were able to physically and mentally abuse me so much. Just to be clear, my partners never physically abused me. My parents did, but I would never have tolerated physical abuse from a partner. That was one standard that was really strong for me. Um, but the mental abuse was really strong.
Okay.
Squirrel.
Tina, talk to us about your belief that triggers are our friends.
Yes, this is something that I learned when I was healing. So for me, writing the memoir and healing came hand in hand because of course a big part of healing, I believe, is to journal. It is amazing what putting pen to paper does. When I wrote the book, I typed it because who's got time to do it by hand? Plus, it hurts your hand. But when I journal, I journal. There's just something magical about putting pen to paper, and it unleashes sometimes things that are locked back there. You didn't even know what was coming out, when you're writing. So, okay, so I would do little journaling things because I was giving myself tasks when I healed, but the major journaling was in the form of writing. So, when you're writing a memoir, first of all, there's nowhere to hide. There's nowhere to hide. And I was writing about big bad stuff. And I was really worried about childhood because I couldn't remember it. I thought, how am I supposed to write this? Like, I can remember these moments, but I don't have any details. And when you write a book, you need details, right? You need to put people in the picture with you. So I actually had to call my older sister and say, I know you don't want to talk about this, but you're the one who remembers everything. She's only a year older than me. So she's also the one who really lived my experience, maybe a little more than the younger sisters did. And so she sat down and walked me through the details. So as I was writing, I would get these writer's blocks and I would go, I don't understand what just happened there, right? And then I would realize, oh, you don't get to move forward until you start working on that. And that's when I was like, well, I don't even know how to do that. It's COVID. I'm by myself. I'm isolated. I was mandated to do this right before COVID hit. And when she said, this is going to take you 2 years to write this, I thought, where the heck am I supposed to get time to do that? Right. I'm a full-time tour guide and okay, well, it's seasonal to be fair. So I thought, oh, and maybe in the winter. And she's like, oh, don't you worry. You're going to find the time. Boom, COVID hits. I have 2 years. Not only 2 years off where I'm not working, but 2 years where I'm isolated. So not only am I writing, but I'm living with my demons, literally, and my ghosts, right? So I wasn't triggered as much then because I was by myself. There was no one to trigger me, but writing was triggering me and it was showing me what needed to be healed. Fast forward a little bit, I go back into the real world. Now I'm getting triggered. So I'm on the bus one day and I'm giving some instruction, and this woman stands up and yells at me in front of everybody. You should have told us that yesterday. And I'm like, I did tell you that yesterday. And everyone on the bus kind of snickers because they know I told them that yesterday. You should have told us that better. And really, she just starts kind of yelling at me. And I feel I'm usually pretty calm, but I felt triggered. And my whole back went up and I just went, oh, I want to punch this woman in the face right now, right? And so I tell a daily joke when I'm on tour, and I was about to tell this joke, but I was not in the mood now. I was pissed off. And I thought, okay, you're on a microphone in front of 45 people. You need to take a minute. So I just took a moment. I just said what I had to finish saying for that moment. And I went, the joke can wait 5 minutes. And I sat down and I went, okay, I'm triggered. Yeah, she's being rude. I get rude people a lot, but I'm triggered. There's a difference. And so I went, okay, why am I triggered? What did she just do that triggered me? And it was like, she tried to publicly humiliate me. When someone has a complaint, they come to you on the side and go, hey, I don't want to say this in front of everybody, but I didn't like this, or could you fix this, or could you do it differently? And you go, yeah, great. Thanks for telling it to me. When someone shouts at you in front of a room full of people, they want to humiliate you. And that's where I went, oh, she wanted to humiliate me. She wanted to put me down. And I was right. So that's not the point. But I went, okay, who does that remind me of? That needs to be the next question. First of all, what's the emotion that I'm feeling? And then who does that remind me of? And I went, oh my God, that's my mother. My mother loved to publicly humiliate. She's the person that if your boyfriend's coming over for dinner and you've got all your, friends over and their family and you want to impress them, that's going to pull out the story of when you peed your pants when you were 9 years old. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, not that I did that, but she's that person. The most humiliating story she can find, she's going to say it when everybody else is in the room. And so that trigger, I was like, oh, that's my mother. And so then I went, okay, there's something here that needs to be healed. And so I did the inner work, sitting on a coach full of people. I did the inner work. I knew why I was triggered. I released it. I thanked that woman for triggering me because I had something that needed to be healed. I didn't thank her right to her face. I thanked her soul, right? You don't have to do that, but I thanked her soul. Thank you for triggering me. Yeah, you pissed me off. I'm going to acknowledge that you pissed me off because, again, don't ignore your pain or your triggers. You need to walk through them, not around them. I acknowledge why you did that. I acknowledge I had something to learn. And now I'm going to thank you for triggering me because I just healed that. And I'm less triggered now when someone tries to publicly humiliate me. So I've done so much work on healing my mother, but there's always layers upon layers upon layers upon layers of that, of what people did to you or things that happened to you. And so you might heal that thing, but underneath the pain is anger. Underneath the anger is embarrassment. Underneath the embarrassment is shame. You know what I'm saying? You're going to get those layers. Every layer needs to be healed. You can't just do a blanket healing. It just doesn't work that way. Depends how big the trauma was. If it's living inside of you, it needs to be purged. Therefore, it needs to be addressed. So triggers are your friend when you know how to work with them. If you're in survival mode, then triggers are just what they sound like, triggers for that knee-jerk reaction, for that fly off the handle. For my adult self just got put away and my inner child is now the one speaking. This is why we often sound so immature when we're in an argument. It's because our inner child is taken over. If you don't heal your inner child, they're still running your life when the big moments happen. Right? So if we follow our triggers and use them when we begin our healing journey, one of the way that the soul leads us in the direction that our healing needs to go is to give us the triggers. To go, you know what? You need to do some more healing around your ex that bullied you. So you're going to be on the subway today, riding the bus or riding the subway, I guess, if you're on the subway, and a bully is going to say something to you. Spirit's going to make that happen. And you go, that was awful. Why did you do that? No, if you pay attention, the trigger is because it's to trigger you so that you'll heal that. And they become your greatest tool if you know how to work with them, right? So when we stop being in survival mode, then the triggers go into where we get to thrive, because now our triggers are leading us to thrive. Our soul doesn't want to hurt us. It's not leading us astray. It doesn't do things we can't handle. If it's showing us triggers, it's because that is the next thing that needs to be healed. And if you don't listen to those triggers, the next trigger will be bigger and bigger because you're not getting the message. Again, not to punish you, but to go, how do I get this person's attention? Well, I got to go bigger, apparently. Right? So you can
Right.
upstream or you can swim against the tide, right? Against the flow of water. You can make it easier, you can make it hard. So use your triggers, use them. They're not
Right. Absolutely. And it's just that idea too that getting out of our own way with the realization that things are not happening to you, they're happening for you. You just have
yeah,
to be aware of that difference and again, get out of that poor me mentality of even when there's been a series of shitty things happening, even when you feel like you're down on your luck and it's one thing after another, it's like what is bigger than what has just happened? What is
the message.
the message that the world is trying to tell me? And I think that it's really easy to say that in a conversation like this, but when you're in the thick of it and when you are living in the mess that feels like is all around you, right? It's
Yes.
really hard to not
Yeah.
just get pissed, just go into that secluded part of yourself that just doesn't deal with anything, right?
It
Or
shuts down.
refuses, right? But it's like learning to see it through a different lens and then starting to ask yourself the right questions so that you can be open to the answers. How did you learn to ask yourself the right questions?
Good question, by the way. Because again, I was isolated. I also didn't grow up in a generation where we had YouTube or anywhere to turn to get these spiritual questions. Yes, there were some self-help books out there. Of course, there were astrology books. Those things have been around forever. But a lot of them were dry and boring and also just way up here. Right? So when you're a new beginner into the spiritual and people start talking about aliens on another planet and la la la, your brain just goes, yeah, you're so woo-woo, I'm out. And I did that a lot in my 20s. I took the things I understood that resonated with me and I just ignored the rest. So I always say now I understand that I had one foot in and one foot out for like 20 years in
Mhm.
spirituality because that's where I was at and that's where my soul was at. And then when spirit was like, yeah, no, we're tired of this game. You need to wake up. That's when it was like, smash you in the face. So now I'm by myself. I'm writing and spirit is giving me that writer's block and I don't hear the voices or anything yet, but I have such an incredibly strong inner voice now and it's getting stronger all the time because that's your intuition, right? So I'm learning to listen to it and it's getting louder, but my inner voice would say, you just wrote about this incident in childhood. I need you to heal that. You don't get to write one more word until you heal that. So I'm like, great, I do that. So I would hear like, go to YouTube. And I'm like, YouTube. I never listened to YouTube in my life. So I'm like, okay, YouTube. So I go to YouTube and I would open the page and boom, the first screen that would be up there would be, you know, how to deal with your inner child. And I was like, oh, interesting, right? I guess I'll listen to this. And it would be the message I needed to hear. And I used, there was one particular teacher I fell madly in love with because she spoke plainly. And she wasn't like I remembered as growing up, these really people that they were talking so up here. It was so above what I understood that you stop listening, right? Some people make it sound so complicated when we need to, dumb it down almost, as they say, when someone is just learning something, speak in simpler terms. And this particular teacher was doing that. And so I would follow because she always left journal prompts at the end of her conversations, and I would do them. And so that's when I would actually physically write. I got myself a book. I'm actually still looking at it now. I got myself a book and I started to write, and I started to ask my child questions. Were you safe as a child? Were you loved? Were you protected? Were you part of the tribe? All of the questions that were sort of in these prompts. And oh man, the journaling that I would do. And then I would sit in meditation. And let me tell you, meditation took me a long time, a long time. Part of a lot of trauma is your monkey mind. It never shuts off. Mine never shuts off. I've been an insomniac my whole life. So shutting down to try to meditate was really hard for me. But again, another teacher taught me that it doesn't even matter if you can silence your mind. Like, start with some guided meditations. Gives you something to focus on. That really helped me. I still do guided meditations. Gives you something to focus on. It also brings you back to center when your mind wanders. You can go, oh, focus on the words again. But she also said, even if your mind is wandering, the meditation is still working. And that was the grace that I needed to go, even though my mind is wandering, I'm not going to berate myself for that or just go forget it and go out of meditation. I'm going to stick with it. And through that meditation, I would then speak to my inner child, like literally say, I want to speak to my inner child. And I would talk to her and I reparented her because she was never parented. She was abused, she was beaten, she was ignored, she was a pawn, she was a tool, she was, just they sucked my energy. That's what parents do when they're bad parents, because everybody's taking energy from everybody else if they don't learn how to get it from the earth, right? Which is where we're supposed to get our energy from. We are always in a battle stealing it from each other. We feel that when we go and spend 5 minutes with someone who's an energy vampire and you're like, God, I'm so emotionally drained and I've been with you 5 minutes. It's because they're draining your energy, right? So A, learn how to not let people do that. B, don't go around people who do that. Although sometimes you're at work, you know what I mean? Sometimes we don't have a choice in life. But thirdly, learn that and get your energy where it needs to come from, which is through meditation, forest bathing. There's so many ways to meditate as well, right? So I would go into meditation and things would start to drop on my head, like literally. And I hugged my inner child and I told her, you're not in charge anymore. You are not in charge of my life anymore. It's time for you to be a child. Like literally speak to your inner child like they're a child because they are a child. And then all the things I never heard in life. You're amazing. You deserve the world. You can have anything you want in the world. You can have wealth and abundance and love and healthy relationships. You really need to reprogram the computer chip that was programmed as a child. You need to take that chip out and reprogram it. And so the tools came to me through teachers on YouTube, plus the original lady that was the channeler. But I only speak to her every 6 months. It's not like she was there for the whole thing. And also at first, the girl that's in the story in Bali, the Reiki person, she stayed
Yes.
for a whole year. And she taught me valuable lessons because she was the same. She spoke in a way that I understood. And I really learned from these sort of four people, the two people on YouTube, the channeler, and this Reiki girl that always was patient with me and explained things to me. And then I took notes because the mandate was always, you're going to write a book and it's going to be followed up with a workbook. Because when people finish reading your book and they want to start their healing journey, they're going to be doing the same thing. How? And so I'm in the throes of writing that book now, which is why I pulled out this old diary, because everything I did is in here. All the journaling I did, all the lessons I learned, the things that helped me to release things, it's all in here. So that's what I'm doing now, is writing this workbook, because I want people to be able to go to one place as well. And I'm going to put lots of tools in there, because anyone who tells you that this is the path you need to take to healing, I'm sorry, there are many, many paths. And your triggers are what's going to tell you which direction to go. So if you're like, I'm going to start with my parents, but you're triggered by an ex-lover, well, your soul's going, yeah, no, I need you to heal that first. It's telling you what to do. So start on your path, but then pay attention to your triggers. They'll come,
Yeah.
need them. They'll come when you're stuck. They'll come when they're like, no, I need this to be the next thing that you heal. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense for sure. And I love how you talked about, first of all, I can't wait for the workbook. Like, I'm definitely going to anticipate when that comes out. So I'll be watching for that. But
Thank you.
also, going back to something that you said about feeling like, you were not doing meditation correctly or like it wasn't working for you. And I think people really get hung up in that where they get very impatient with themselves and feel like it has to look a certain way in order for it to be something that is positive for them. And that's a really big misconception. And I just wanted to put that out there for our listeners that there is no right or wrong way to meditate.
Yeah.
It's just about, even if it's a minute, like 60 seconds, just like sitting with yourself without your phone in front of you, without the TV on, like just being still within yourself for even just the smallest amount of time. And whatever thoughts come in, let them come. When they go, let them go. And
Yes.
just don't be so hard on yourself about it.
Yeah. And maybe drop the expectations, because a walk in the forest, if you are by yourself walking through the forest, this is a meditation. This is a walking
Mhm.
meditation, because that's what it's all about, connecting with nature, right? So
Right?
meditation does two things for me. It grounds me. Well, forest bathing is about grounding, right? So
Mhm.
it grounds me and it stills my monkey mind. We walk around going, give me signs, give me answers, give me messages. Why are you speaking to me? Do you go into meditation and still your mind so spirit can speak to you? Are you even doing that? Well, how's it supposed to? Again, a walk in the forest silently. Boom, spirit, you're in the forest, you're grounding automatically, you're surrounded by nature. These messages can drop on your head, right? And if you're
Hmm.
not someone who hears, I still don't hear, I still don't see. I know I have those gifts, because we all have those gifts, but I'm still not into them yet. There's still blockages there for me, clearly. Past lives that, burned as a witch at the stake and those kinds of things. Those things stick with us, right? Past lives of these histories. But
Refer to the book, listeners. There's more
yeah,
about that in her book too. So there's another little teaser. But yes, carry on.
right? But these things are yeah, ingrained in us. And all we need to do is bring ourselves to stillness and be grounded. And that's what meditation is about.
Yeah.
Yoga. If I don't have time to meditate, I'll do some yoga too. Or if I'm like, oh, I got to choose between meditation and yoga, I'll meditate while I'm doing yoga, because
Hmm.
flowing the energy is also really, really vital movement, right? The two go hand in hand. But I like what you said as well, because I put this in my book. It is better to meditate every day for 5 minutes than once a week for an hour. The whole
Hmm.
idea is that is a practice. Anything that's a practice is something you do daily. And if there's a day where you had to wake up at the crack of dawn and you didn't have time to do it that day, find 1 minute somewhere in the day to just clean your energy. That's
Hmm.
that's okay. Don't berate yourself again for not having the time, but don't let 5, 6, 7 days go through. Because
Right.
I do that, and I do when I'm on tour. I don't have time for these things, and I hate that, and I feel myself becoming ungrounded. Oh,
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. I'm somebody that absolutely loves to immerse myself in the forest, and more specifically, it's not accessible to me daily, but like the mountains.
oh
But
yeah.
for sure, like, and most anybody can find something in nature that they can feel connected to, whether it's the forest or the ocean or the mountains, something is around you, right?
Ah,
And just being able, yeah, just being able to quiet the noise around you, even just for a few minutes, so that you can be more in tune, so you can hear that intuition. And also, something else about intuition is it isn't like a formal delivery of information like you want it to be, right? Think about when you're asking source, spirit guides, angels, whatever you are connecting with in the universe, what is the first thing that comes to mind when you're asking something? Is there a memory that pops up? Like pay attention to the knowledge that's coming in and out of your thoughts. That is intuition.
Yes. Triggers and intuition. These things go hand in hand. Your triggers are helping you heal. Your intuition is showing you how.
I love that.
Also, your way forward, right? Like, how to walk on your highest path and what your mission is and what you need to do that day, right? Our intuition is, we've stomped down our intuition for so long. We don't even know what it is anymore, right? That gut feeling. Usually
Mhm.
the first thought that pops in your head is the right thought. And then we spend the next 10 minutes convincing ourselves why, which way should I go? And then we often do the exact opposite of that very first thought that popped in our head. We talk ourselves right out of it. The first thought is usually the right one, right? Your intuition
Mhm.
is there to guide you. Yeah, I'm getting stronger and stronger at listening to my intuition, and it's a beautiful thing. It's beautiful when you
Yeah.
start to listen to your intuition, right? And when you just have faith and just go, ooh, if everything tells me that that's not the direction I want to go, but you keep showing me it is. At this point, I just go, I have complete faith, right? Like, you brought me through COVID without a job, where I was just hemorrhaging money on an expensive apartment. No money is coming in. I'm writing this book. I'm living in my pain. I'm living it. And the whole time I'm just going, oh my God. But the whole time I was just like, I am living on faith. The life I've been leading has not served me. So if I have to go through some uncomfortable moments to get to the other side, yeah, I'm going to do that. I want
Mhm.
that. I want that peace. My whole life, if you ever asked me, what do you want? It was peace, inner peace, inner peace. And now I have that. I feel that even when I'm triggered, again, I don't go spiraling for weeks or months because someone triggered me. I go, ooh, wow, I'm really triggered. Why? I'm grounded enough and calm enough to go, yeah, that set me off, but not set me off like it used to. Ooh, that's setting me off. I feel the emotion coming immediately instead of just being the explosion that is the emotion. Now it's like, ooh, my back is up. What's triggering me here? And I have the tools to
Mhm.
dive in and heal it. Yeah. And that is
That's that's just really inspiring. What you've done for yourself is really something that I know people are going to connect with from your memoir. They're going to be inclined to do similar for themselves. And that workbook that's going to accompany it is just going to be so essential
yeah.
to partnering with that. So that's just going to be amazing once it's out, and I'll look for it for sure. But Tina, tell us what you want our listeners to walk away thinking about today.
Because different generations are in such different places right now on the planet. Children are born with gifts. Children are always born with gifts, right? There's a reason children have imaginary friends and things like that, right? Because when we're born, our third eye is wide open and we see all these things, and it is parented out of us by disbelieving parents, right? And by a disbelieving world and disbelieving all kinds of things, right? So it's parented out of us. Because as children, I remember my sisters talking to ghosts and things like that. I remember that. I didn't know that's what they were doing at the time, but it's very clear to me now. um, but all children, and this was told to me by my channeler, all children born after 2012, because that's when there was a big shift on the planet, are born with their third eye wide open. And so there's a whole lot of children out there that have these gifts with parents that aren't helping them to utilize them. and they're really having to deal with the intense energy on the planet right now without a lot of tools. So one of the things I want people to understand is the spiritual world, right? But that's not my job to tell people they have to wake up, right? Hopefully I'm planting the seeds that they do that. That was kind of the mission, was to plant seeds. That's what I was told. But for people my age, we didn't grow up again with these tools that are now out there because there's so many spiritually woken people out there that you can go to the YouTube. You can listen to a conversation like this one, right? So my takeaway for people of the older generations is it's never too late to heal. Nothing makes me more sad than hearing someone older say, why should I change now? I've lived with this pain this long. Like, why bother to dive in and make it worse? First of all, make it worse. It can't get worse. You're already living in your pain, right? But to not even want to heal, that makes me so sad. So my several messages would be, A, you're never too old to heal. In fact, it's usually when you're older that these realizations that you have patterns in the first place start to happen. Often happens also when you have your own kids, right? Kids are a reflection of you. Your children are a mirror of you. So you start to see sometimes those things, but it's never too late. Yes, healing can be painful. Of course it can. The more trauma you have in your life, the more pain you have to walk through. But you're living that pain anyways, whether you remember it or not, whether you acknowledge it or not, whether you buried it so deep you don't even know where it is or not. I'm living proof that I was still repeating that pain over and over and over. The lesson repeats itself until it's learned. So it's never too late to start. And my God, don't be afraid of crying or walking through your pain. It's kind of beautiful. Like, yeah, it's painful. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I had to cry a lot. I had to walk through a lot of pain. But now I see the beauty in that. Pain is how we heal. It's how tears are how we release the trauma from our body, right? So it's okay to cry and it's okay to walk through your pain. And when you do it, don't be so hard on yourself. Just remember, we're all souls here. Because especially when you've lived in these narcissistic relationships, you berate yourself for not leaving sooner, right? The first person you have to forgive is yourself, for sure. And it's easier than you think once you start. The minute our soul says, I want to heal, the minute we say, I want to heal, our soul takes over and goes, oh, thank God. Now I'm going to show you how. So don't fear it. Embrace it. You'll feel whole for the first time in your life. You'll also realize you don't need love from an external source when you are filled with love. And that's also the only way you're ever going to have a healthy partner. If you don't love yourself, no one can ever love you. You don't even know what love is. When you do, and then you truly, wholly love yourself, that's when you're ready for another partner. And then you will only attract another partner who's like you, that's been on their healing journey, because like attracts like. So you don't get what you want, you get what you are. If you want better relationships, become a better you. And that's about love. That's not about having a bigger house or a bigger car. That is about loving you. And that is my message. Love you.
Thank you for that. That was something that I think I for sure needed to hear, and I know a lot of people will need to hear as well. Tina, this has just been just a gorgeous conversation, and you are a gorgeous soul, and I just appreciate you taking the time to be in this space with me. Thank you for sharing your beautiful memoir, and yeah, just for being exactly who you are.
Thank you. And that's what we all want, right? Be our authentic selves. No masks. Take the masks off.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Sarah.